This is the final question of the evening and also the final opportunity for candidates to use their rebuttals. A voice for Atlantic Canada is the final theme. Kellie Leitch will be the first candidate to respond. Atlantic Canadians sent 32 Liberal MPs to Ottawa in the last election. With all our MPs and provincial premiers being Liberals, many in our region are starting to feel taken for granted. Under the Liberals, our Toronto MP is now the minister responsible for ACOA. Our voice on the Supreme Court was almost stripped away, and much needed and promised infrastructure dollars have been slow to come our way. Worse, none of our provincial governments appear ready to stand up to Ottawa. As leader of the Conservative Party, and then as Prime Minister, what specifically will you do to make sure Atlantic Canadians are fairly represented in Ottawa?
Atlantic Canada is a gateway for our nation. For so many people, for so many generations, this was their first point of contact. Atlantic Canadian values are Canadian values. Freedom, tolerance, hard work, generosity. These are the values that are enshrined in our Constitution and at the core of what it means to be Canadian. I've outlined a common sense plan that ensures that all immigrants receive an interview from a trained immigration officer. As part of that plan, they'll be asked to agree to historic values. This is a common sense plan that 2/3 of Canadians and 90% of Conservatives agree with. But I'm the only candidate at this table that supports it. It is by advocating for common sense policies that the majority of Canadians, the majority of Atlantic Canadians agree with, that we will be able to defeat Justin Trudeau in 2019 and ensure that there are Atlantic Canadian MPs with a voice at the table.
Michael Chong.
Well, thanks, Rob. This is a great province. I've spent many times over the years here in this province. Believe it or not, I've camped out at Meat Cove. My tent almost blew away. I've spent an afternoon at the bar in Shetty Camp dancing to fiddle music. I've been in the Annapolis Valley and seen the blueberries and apples that go for export to South America. It's a great province. But I believe that one of the challenges that this province has in Ottawa is that their MPs aren't heard around the table. And so we need to change our system by giving more power back to elected members of Parliament and to the grassroots members of political parties. You know, we've had 32 MPs here from the Atlantic Canadian region, and in the last year, not one of them spoke up about the proposed plan not to appoint a judge from Atlantic Canada. Not one of them has spoken up about the government's decision this week to cancel its plans for electoral reform. Under my 10-point plan for democratic reform, this province and its MPs will have a real voice at the table.
Andrew Saxton.
Thank you. I also come from a coastal province, British Columbia, and we have the same issues facing us that you have facing you as well. We're a coastal playground. We want to protect our coastline. But at the same time, we also realize that to create jobs, we need to get our products to Tidewater. Energy East is one of those projects that makes sense. There's no safer way to transport oil than in a pipe in the ground that comes to the East Coast. That will take our reliance off of Middle Eastern oil entirely. Why should we be buying oil from the Middle East in Eastern Canada when we've got more than enough oil coming from the West? That is a very important project. The Maritime Link is another project that I would look at fast-tracking as well. It's really important that we create jobs here, and the free trade agreement with the European Union is another opportunity for maritimers to get jobs, because all those Canadian products are going to be shipped through your ports. And as Prime Minister, I will make sure that your ports are buzzing again with activity.
Brad Trost.
The question is about a voice for Atlantic Canada. And I don't think the next leader of the Conservative Party needs to wait till he's Prime Minister. Ottawa doesn't know best. That's not just true for the country, that's true for the party. And as much as I loved the last 10 years that we were in government, sometimes that was a little bit of the problem. On party affairs, on things internally, on selection of candidates, on various things, Ottawa knew best. The same thing needs to go when I am Prime Minister of Canada. The Prime Minister is first among equals. He needs to be able to delegate regional decisions to his regional ministers, who should actually have portfolios that fit their region. You need to listen to the Scott Armstrongs and the Rob Moores. They need to have authority to make decisions for their region when they get back in Parliament. Not all decisions can or should be made by the Prime Minister. He needs to listen to his caucus.
Erin O'Toole.
Well, who's going to be a voice? It's who has been a voice for Atlantic Canada. I'm very proud to have studied here, served in the military here, and when I left, I took a part of this place in my heart. I worked to support military family resource centers through the True Patriot Love Centre in Greenwood, here in Halifax. I started the Alexander Keith Sociable in Toronto and raised money for the IWK from Maritimers transplanted working in Toronto. I've been fighting on Atlantic Canada issues consistently as an MP, often with my friend Lisa, particularly on the Supreme Court of Canada, to make sure you have a voice. Now, when, as I said, there's the silence of the 32 lambs in Ottawa. So as your leader, I have said the rebuilding of our party and the win in 2019 starts in Atlantic Canada, and I will be here in the Legion Halls, the church basements, fighting with you to win some of the great seats back, including you, Rob.
Chris Alexander.
I've also spent summers here on Cape Breton Island. I was proud to be here often as Peter MacKay's Parliamentary Secretary for National Defence, and to see that spark plug of the shipbuilding program start to do its work for the economy of Atlantic Canada. But we need much more, and it's not enough just to have a voice, strong voices. We will have them in Ottawa again. We need a vision for what is going to transform this economy. It's been since Confederation that our economy has become more and more oriented north-south, continentally. It's benefited the two big provinces in the centre. We've had a bit of growth in energy in the west. It's time we turned ourselves outwards and seized the opportunity of free trade with Europe, seized the opportunity of free trade agreements with Asia, and build those energy bridges that are going to help keep Europe free, that are going to help reduce dependence of Europe on Vladimir Putin, that are going to create a new generation of jobs here in high.
Lisa Raitt.
Thank you very much. In order to have a strong Atlantic voice, we need to return strong Atlantic MPs, and we have to earn back the trust of the voter. Simply put, for everyone who knocked doors, you know what that's all about. And what do I know what I say about Atlantic Canada? This is what I would say to the voters. Atlantic Canada is a founding part of our country. It is a caring part of our country. We have gone through wars, we have gone through disasters, we have gone through neglect. And when we run out of resources and manufactured goods to send to the other parts of the world, we educate and send our most precious resource. We send our children. We deserve a voice. We have earned that voice. And I will listen to that voice. We will get these votes back. And I will make sure that we grow together, because at the end of the day, Atlantic Canadians have consistently punched above their weight, and they're an incredibly important part of our wonderful country.
Deepak Obhrai.
Thank you. Let me remind everyone, all Conservative MPs are your voice. Even if we come from different part of the world, different part of the country, we stand up for what is right, and in this case, rights also for Canadian Atlantic provinces. But let me also say one thing. It is very important that we respect provincial rights. One of our colleagues here says he will not respect provincial rights. But if we make the province governments very strong, they can stand up at the times when there are no for their own rights in this province for Atlantic Canada. So let's ensure, we are standing here today at the PC convention, let's ensure that the provinces have provincial Conservative governments that can stand up for you and fight for your rights in the national capital. Thank you.
Pierre Lemieux.
Thank you. I think for Atlantic Canadians to have a stronger voice in Ottawa, you need to have more elected MPs on the Conservative side in Ottawa. And how do you do that? You win the confidence of Atlantic Canadians, and I'm convinced that the recipe of success is the one that I outlined just previously, by putting in place a strong, healthy economy that creates jobs. I think Atlantic Canadians want good-paying jobs in the region so they can stay in Atlantic Canada and raise their families. And that type of winning formula will lead to a Conservative win in many, many ridings, which will increase your presence and your voice in Ottawa. I also think that the federal government can change the way in which it does some business. In other words, in this technological age, it is possible for many people to work remotely or from satellite offices that might be located in the region. So that Atlantic Canadians do not need to go to Ottawa to work in a government job. They can work remotely or attached to satellite government offices in the region. So I would see the government changing the way in which it works in order to help
Rick Peterson.
Rob, this is the most important question of the night, and it feels so good to come home. I'm a Peter Lougheed progressive Conservative. In 1971, I signed my progressive Conservative leadership. In 2003, I supported a progressive Conservative named Peter MacKay. I supported Peter. He was the first person that I called last summer when I was looking at coming into this race. Our party needs more progressive Conservative voices under my leadership. The progressive element of this party, which has been too quiet, which has not been strong enough, will regain vigor. The second thing we need to do is we need to beat Justin Trudeau. To beat Justin Trudeau, you need a plan. You've heard about my plan. Lower taxes, balance the budget, create jobs. Second thing, c'est qu'il faut parler français. Il faut souvent parler aux Acadiens ou tous les francophones et les francophiles à travers le Canada. Grassroots support. I've been on campaigns for the last 30 years, and I hope you'll...
Andrew Scheer.
Well, it's been very frustrating to see the reward for Atlantic Canada for voting Liberal en masse and how you've been treated by this Liberal government. But it should be no surprise. It happens every time there's a Trudeau in office. It's the same Ottawa knows best, centralizing, big government approach that the Liberals are famous for. That's what we need to do to change to make sure that Atlantic Canada has a strong voice. It's not just about, although it's important, it's very important, the Supreme Court position. It's also Energy East. Watching all 32 Liberal MPs voting against Energy East was one of the most frustrating days in the House of Commons. It's the moratorium on coal that was slapped down on this province without any consultation. That's the type of thing that we as Conservatives will fight. We need your support to win back those seats in 2019.
Maxime Bernier.
I want to be your voice. I want to be the voice for Atlantic Canada, but also the voice for all Canadians. I want to help you to develop your economy, and I think the best way to do that is for having a real free trade in Canada. It is a shame that after 150 years in this country that we don't have an economic union. That was the condition for creating this country. We must have free trade. The cost for you is too huge because you're a small market. If you're not able to sell your goods to other provinces and outside this country, you won't be able to create wealth and jobs in this country. So if we have real free trade, we can increase the growth of the GDP here in Atlantic Canada by 2 and 3%. So we can do that together, and I have a plan for being sure that we'll have a real free trade, and this country will have an economic union after 150 years.
Stephen Blaney.
There were 0 Conservative members in Quebec in 2006. 0. What did we say? We said that we would do what we say and say what we do. We said that we would put money back in the pocket of the people. And we got re-elected 4 times, actually. Actually, we have a pretty good region for Conservative, Maxime. Why? Because we have farmers, we have people who trust us. It's all about trust. And I've been privileged to work with colleagues like Rob Moore, with Miss Tilly O'Gordon, with Loyal Ahern, with Robert Gauguin, where I was at the shooting in Moncton, unfortunately. Great. The Atlantic is part of Canada. And it needs to be part of our next government. It needs to be taken into account, and that's how we're going to win back the heart of Atlantic, by being true to ourselves. Thank you.
Kevin O'Leary.
You know, Atlantic Canada represents a huge opportunity for the Conservative Party. most of us can trace our DNA, our early heritage, back to a pier just a few hundred yards from here. My father, Terry O'Leary, came here in the 40s. My mother, Georgette Bukalam, and her family, Lebanese immigrants. I look at this fantastic opportunity this way. You have to appeal to the people. It'll be a personal failure for me if I can't turn every Lebanese immigrant in Atlantic Canada into a card-carrying conservative. They make great food, and they're great entrepreneurs. And if you're Irish, you're mine. We're going to go together here, back to Ottawa. But this is a huge opportunity. Remember, we have to build this party back to what Harper had on his first majority mandate, 300,000 members. We're under 100 now. I've got to expand the base big time. Everybody counts. This is a huge opportunity right here in Atlantic Canada.
Now we'll move to the rebuttal phase. Andrew Saxton.
Thank you. I'm going to turn every Hungarian immigrant into a card-carrying conservative. and every United Empire loyalist as well. The economy, folks, is going to be the #1 issue in the next election because this Trudeau government is the most economically inept since the last Trudeau government. I'm the only candidate on this stage who has got experience, significant experience in finance, both in the private sector and in government. I worked with Jim Flaherty as his parliamentary secretary. I was part of the finance team that balanced the budget. I will do it again. AndrewSaxton.ca.
Kevin O'Leary.
Nowhere on your passport or in the Canadian Constitution does it say you have to tolerate mediocrity in government and incompetence. This is all about to change. The body politic in Canada is no different than anywhere else around the world. People are sick of politicians spinning them BS. That time is over, my friends. That's why I'm in this race. We're going to change it all.
Andrew Scheer.
Well, you know, Mr. O'Leary just talked about expanding our base and building up our membership. But at the same time, he says that he's not going to seek a seat right away in the House of Commons. He's not going to give this project his full attention. He's going to keep his other job and continue to travel around the world. Beating Justin Trudeau in 2019 is a full-time job. It requires a full-time commitment.
Stephen Blaney.
Kevin, it's great to have you here tonight, and you've been the target of many attacks, but frankly, we missed you in Quebec. And you said that to win over Justin Trudeau, you have to show courage. Well, Deepak showed courage, and now he has more fans than you do in Quebec. Canadian and Conservative deserves to have a leader that has courage. Thank you.
Lisa Raitt.
After the Halifax explosion, Nova Scotians expressed their gratitude to the folks in the United States by sending them a Christmas tree every year. And this year, of course, the Christmas tree came from Cape Breton. It was great. I just never expected that Boston in return would send us a candidate for the leadership.
Michael Chong.
Well, Mr. O'Leary, you said you want to grow our party, but you've shown a remarkable lack of judgment. Earlier this week, you posted a horrific videotape of yourself firing a machine gun in Miami on the very same day that we were burying the dead from the Quebec City attacks last weekend. This is not the judgment of somebody who should be leader of the Conservative Party or Prime Minister of Canada.
Kevin O'Leary.
Here's what it takes to win a majority mandate. That's the only way we can turn the country around. While my fellow politicians here are sitting in Ottawa, I am going to go from college to college to college and win back every single voter that Trudeau took away from us. He got 82% of that young vote. Now, luckily, I have a wicked competitive advantage. They all know me as an entrepreneur. Yes, that's the benefit of television. But when I show up to teach at Dalhousie, I'll get 60% of those kids to vote for us.
Well, that was the last of our questions. Thank you to all of the federal leadership candidates for sharing their responses. It's clear that no matter which candidate is leader after May 27th, the Conservative Party of Canada will be in very good hands.